Hey everybody, this is Ron LeGrand, and thank you for being on the training today. We've got a lot to cover, so you might want to get some pencil and paper to write with if you're actually watching this and not listening to it. And we sent out some handouts. We sent out some scripts, actually, which I'm going to be discussing, and also a property information sheet. If for some reason you did not get that, you may go to ronlegrand.com/handouts and grab them. In fact, you can do it while I'm talking if you can. Ron LeGrand, that's LeGrand.com/handouts. So if you don't have the forms we sent you, grab them so that they'll be in front of you when I go over them. However, they will be displayed on the screen, so whether you have them or not, it probably isn't going to make that much difference. All right, we got some time together to talk about the first steps of actually buying and selling houses. And this is a very important lesson because if we don't get past this lesson, we probably won't get anywhere. And my goal here today is to try to make it as simple as I can to talk about pre-screening them and getting the information, where to get the information, finding the sellers and pre-screening them and so forth. Emily, are you there?
I am.
Let me tell you, this is Emily that we're talking to right now. Emily is going to be available to actually read me your questions as soon as you put them in. If you'll see on your screen here, you can ask questions anytime you like. She will actually read them to me as we go, won't you, Emily?
Yes, I will.
We are going to go through the property information sheet. Then we're going to go through the scripts. And as you put your questions in, I'm going to try to answer them so we don't have to wait till the end and do them all at one time. First, a little bit of preliminary information about where you have to be. We got all kinds of people on the webinar right now. In fact, hundreds of them. And that means that they're all not students that have been in our system a while. Some of you are brand new. So I can't skip the basics here to get to the pre-screening stuff. So let's go through a little bit of basics first, and then we'll get there. I've designed this lesson to be the lesson that you use anytime you're pre-screening pretty houses in any area of the country, or any country for that matter. So this is something you're going to want to go to the Gold Club site if you're a Gold Club member and retrieve and probably watch a couple of times once we post it so you can clearly get this front end part. Many people fail right here because they don't know what to say, they don't have a script in front of them, or don't know what they're trying to accomplish. And as you're going to see as we go through these scripts, we don't make sellers offers, they make us offers. So there's all kinds of income streams built within real estate. First one is rehabbing and retailing. We will have no discussion of that today, nor will we talk about wholesaling. That's not what this lesson is about. I still currently rehab a couple of houses. In fact, I have two going on simultaneously as I talk. I don't wholesale anymore. I haven't wholesaled for years. Frankly, I'd rather keep the property and get the big bang for the buck out of it than to flip it to make a few dollars. I kind of like to keep the goose alive. 90% of my business today is actually pretty houses, beautiful homes in beautiful neighborhoods, and price ranges running from the median price on up to about $1.5 million is the standard around the country. And my biggest front-end payday is from the option deposit and or the down payment if we choose to sell the properties on owner financing. It's all about terms. We got to get terms so we can give terms. And that means that we can get in and out and avoid all the costly entanglements and don't do the things that some people think you have to do in real estate. There's no delays, there's no banks, and we can make the money quickly. In fact, within 30 days most of the time, 60 days tops, because we don't have any of those things that we have to do. No repairs, no banks to approve anything. In fact, there are no loans to be approved. You are the committee. You decide who you want to put in the house and how much you're willing to take for their non-refundable option deposit. And there's only three kinds of terms you're going to get for the seller that will allow you to exit. There's three kinds of terms going in. There's two kinds of terms going out. Going in, you can either lease it with an option to buy, or you can just take over the deed subject to. In fact, we're doing one of those today here in my office. As we said here, I'm buying a property that's worth about $225,000, and the seller owes about $153 on it. And they just want out, and I'm happy to oblige them. A couple of payments behind, I'll make those payments up, and I'll pay the closing cost. And then I will have acquired a house for, well, I couldn't say nothing because I do have to make up two payments of $1,400, $1,500 and pay the closing cost. But I got a lot of equity. House needs some work, but it's habitable like it is. So I'm very simply going to get the seller to deed me the house, and then I will put a lease option tenant in the house as is at a much higher price than I paid for it, and let them do the work with their own labor and their own time and ultimately cash me out. The thing about it is I will get no less than $10,000, maybe $15,000 up front from that tenant buyer as a non-refundable option deposit. And that, my friends, is your front-end payday. Now, that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't get terms. In other words, they just deeded me the house and I took over the loan. That's called buying the house subject to. Loan stays in the seller's name, and it will stay in the seller's name until it's paid off. And there's no term by which I have to pay it off. They're just literally giving me the house. Probably going to lose it to foreclosure if they don't give it to me anyway. So it works for them, it works for me. My end strategy is very simple. Put somebody in the house and forget about it. In my case, I don't care if they cash me out or not. I'd rather they just sit there and make a payment and the house grow in value and the loan go down. And I've collect 10 or 15 on the front end and probably get a monthly cash flow. If they cash me out, fine. So anyway, I got terms so I can give terms. What makes that deal so great is there's no costly entanglements. I'm not doing any repairs. I'm not qualifying for any loans. I'm not even qualifying my buyer for a loan. They go get a loan, they'll get it on their own. I have nothing to do with it because I really don't care if they cash me out or not. And thirdly, buying with owner financing. All around the country, we can buy properties with owner financing. Therefore, we can sell them with owner financing. So our three entrances are on the board, but there's only two exits. Well, there's three exits. One of them's cash out. But in the world of terms, that's the ultimate end goal, I guess. But in reality, we are offering these properties with terms to our buyers, so in time they can get qualified and cash us out. I'm either going to lease option the property, meaning I'm going to lease it with a non-refundable deposit with the option to buy at some price, or I'm going to sell it with owner financing and get a down payment. Either way, I'm going to get a big deposit or a big down payment on the front end, and that's how I get my first front-end payday. Now, you might be asking, well, golly, who's going to give us these terms? Well, you may or may not know that here in Global Publishing, we have a virtual assistant floor. I mean, literally a whole floor full of people who don't do anything all day, but the task required for our clients, meaning you, to buy and sell houses. And one of those tasks is to call FSBOs. In other words, do what we're going to do on this training here. They're going to be the ones doing the calling and filling out the property information sheet that I'm about to teach you how to do. So because of that, we are able to capture all of our numbers, and we know exactly what percentage of sellers will do what. And in fact, we're probably the only ones in the country can answer that question. So here's what we know. 36% of all of for sale by owners that we get from you and that we generate for you will say yes to terms. They'll either say yes, they will sell for what they owe, or like my deal I just told you about, or yes, they will lease purchase it, or yes, they will owner finance it. At least they would consider one of those options. That means about a third of all of the FSBOs out there are prospects for you to follow up on, and I'm about to show you how to do that and turn some of those into deals. Now, it doesn't mean a third of them will be deals. It just means that about a third of them will at least entertain the thought of talking about terms, and then we'll take those further down into deal or no deal with a script, which we'll come back to here in just a minute. Again, if you happen to tune in late, you can get those scripts and the property information sheet at ronlegrand.com/handouts. ronlegrand.com/handouts if you don't already have them in front of you. We did email them to you, but we are fully aware that sometimes emails don't get through, or they don't get open, or they go in your spam or whatever. All right. The minimum check I want you to make is $10,000, and please make a note of that. I see so many students come into my events, and they're happy to get $5,000, $6,000. I'm not happy. I want you to get a minimum of 10. And to be fair with you, I really don't even want to mess with a deal that only nets you $10,000. I can show you many deals where we got much more than that from that non-refundable option deposit or down payment we discussed. And here the key is, my friends, you got to get into the beautiful homes and the beautiful neighborhoods. So let me get this clear in your head. If you insist on working in the $100,000 low-end crap, as I did for so many years and still do in the ugly house side of the business, if you insist on working in the low-priced houses, you're going to get low-priced down payments. But if we can get to a median and above, here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I live, my median is approaching $200,000. When I deal with houses that are in gorgeous condition in gorgeous neighborhoods at 200 and above, with no risk on my part, no risk because I'm not guaranteeing debt, I'm not writing checks. I'm getting the sellers to give me terms. Sometimes those terms take a little bit of money, but never a lot. So when I can get terms, I can give terms. Now, when I can give terms, I've discovered that the higher priced properties I work in, the bigger that non-refundable option deposit is, or that down payment. So the more dollars you waller in, the more stick to you. And that's why making a measly $10,000 on one of these deals is really not an energetic goal. And in fact, it is my bottom of the barrel. I won't do a deal that makes less than that. And in my situation, I don't even want to do deals that only make 10. Once you get one of those deals that'll get you 50, you don't want to do any more 10s. I can tell you it'll be hard to go back. So let's focus on the quality properties and the quality neighborhoods and not the low-end crap because you might feel comfortable talking to them. All right. There's 5 steps to your success. This is the 5 steps to your success, whether you're in real estate as an investor, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you own a restaurant or a retail store or a service business, these same 5 steps apply. In fact, this is your business plan condensed to 5 steps. First one is to locate prospects. I'm about to show you how we do that in a pretty house business. But I can tell you, if we skip step 1, the other 4 don't matter. If we don't have any prospects, we don't have any business. I have a couple of restaurants. If people don't walk through the front door, there's nobody to serve. Prescreening prospects means we have to call out the suspects from the prospects. I just told you that 36% of the people who have a house for sale without a realtor involved will say yes to terms. However, there's a percentage of those 36% that you actually will be able to do business with. So first we have to locate the prospects, and the prospects say yes, the suspects say no, and the VAs ask them those questions. Then we have to pre-screen those prospects by taking the yeses and making a phone call to them and following my scripts to construct and present offers. When we get to them, you'll see why they do the work for you. By the time you get through reading the script, the offer has been presented from the seller to you. And then, of course, we got to follow up and close quickly. That's not going to be discussed on this lesson, but there are plenty of lessons available. And, of course, we do live training that you can get to anytime you wish. My 4-day training that I still teach called the Quick Turn Real Estate School. The training is there at whatever level you want to tap into it. You're going to need to know where to find the leads, what to say to them when you find them, and how to fill out the form to capture the information. We are going to go over all of that on this lesson, and that's what it's about. This is the magic sheet. This is the literal heart of the pretty house business. It's called the property information sheet. I created this sheet and has been revised many, many, many times. And today, this sheet makes it so easy for VA or you or someone you appoint to call the sellers and fill out the sheet. And by the time they get through with that, you will see whether you have a suspect or a prospect. So we're going to go through this sheet here in a minute and make sure that you know how to fill it out correctly if you're going to do it, and or how we teach our VAs to fill it out if you let them do it for you. Your targets. All right, you want to know where we're going to get prospects from. Here are the targets. Here are the websites, some of the websites that our VAs actually use to find leads for our clients regardless of what city you're in. Now, there are a whole list of sites that we use for our clients, but these sites are generally right up there with them. However, a lot of sites they know. We have students all over the country, so we know that some of the sites are local, so we tap into the local sites for you as well. But always Craigslist, always Craigslist. These are ads that the sellers run online. This is the first way to find these folks is the sellers run ads on these websites, and you can go on these websites and find these for sale by owner ads. And usually you have to email them to get their phone number to call them to collect the information that we're about to discuss. Best thing to do is go to Google and type in, I want to buy a house at whatever your city is, and here will come a whole bunch of websites where people advertise where their houses for sale. If you'd rather our virtual assistants do this for you, now remember their job, they will go on these websites for you. You don't even need to tell them what sites. They will hunt down these FSBO ads, and they will call them at least 3 times to try to get them on the telephone. After we call 3 times and leave a message, we figure, well, they're not going to call us back. It's a waste of time, so let's go on to better prospects, and that's exactly what we do. Our virtual assistants are dedicated to this job. The ones who call FSBOs only call FSBOs. That's all they do because we won't let them do anything else. We learn pretty quickly that if we let them do other tasks, they'll do the other task, and the FSBOs don't get called. So we have a team of people that don't do anything but call the leads. We have another team that generates the leads online for you, and then another team that does all of the other things like posting your ads and building your flyers and an endless list of things that our virtual assistants will do for you to keep you from having to not do it. Our whole goal here at Global is to do most of the work for you and leaving you with only one thing to do, and that's make decisions. In my business, I still buy 3 or 4 houses per month, sometimes more, sometimes less. Most of them are pretty houses. I am constantly making offers on bank-owned properties, however, from my desk. I buy 1 or 2 of those a month. And 90% of everything that needs to get done are done by virtual assistants. If they're not done by virtual assistants, in my case, they're done by my executive assistant, Tish. But I can tell you that a small percentage of her time is dedicated to real estate. Most of it is dedicated to the other chaos that I created with all the other businesses that I have. So my goal for you is to first, let's get you through the basics. Let's get you so you understand what you're trying to accomplish. But simultaneously, let's put you in a position to where you're on autopilot so you can need very, very little of your time to do this business. Here's the cost. It's $297 a month. You not only get 5 hours of our VA service, but that also gets you as a Gold Club member. And I'm not really going to go over what a Gold Club member is on this training. I figure if you want to know, you can go to ronsgoldclub.com and find out for yourself. But I will tell you that it's the most intense real estate site in America today, and it's the best bargain in real estate by far because it houses all of our forms and agreements and just hundreds of hours worth of training, videos, and numerous other valuable tools that you're going to need. And in fact, the lesson that we're creating here right now, once done, will be mounted on the Gold Club, and there's a search engine so that you can get to this lesson. And you'll find that pretty much any subject you want to discuss is probably posted up there in 10 or 15-minute lessons on our Gold Club site. But for $297 a month, you're automatically a Gold Club member, which by itself, incidentally, is $59. If you don't want the VA service, you can join the Gold Club for $59 a month. But we also send you some daily leads. Every day you get leads in your inbox, meaning for sale by owner ads. We have a company that scours 17,000 different websites every single day and pulls off the FSBO ads and literally sends them to your inbox every single day. Now, if you have a VA, you can just mark the ones you want or forward them to your VA. Your VA will call the leads for you, and here comes property information sheets back. You're going to get an email account. You're going to get a texting service. And here's the bigger, you're going to get a website. We build you a website. It only takes a few days to do it, and on it is a buyer's list database. So now, when you're collecting buyers, they're all automatically put into your database. In fact, what's not up here is you also get an interactive voice response system. That's a very sophisticated voicemail system that we set up for you to take all the calls from your buyers. So today, no longer do we take calls from people trying to buy our houses. It goes into a system that takes the calls, asks them the questions one by one, like how much do you have to put down and how much can you pay per month? And then our VAs or you go back and take that information off that system and follow up on the people who have money and are pre-screened. So the time is very limited as to how much it takes to follow up. Our virtual assistants will do that for you, but if you want to do that as well, that's up to you. But the good news is the IVR not only captures the information, but puts it into your database for you so that everything is automated. Guys, it's never been easier to do what we do than it is right now. And there's no long-term contracts. You can quit anytime you want. This is not AT&T. You're not going to get penalized if you decide you don't need our service anymore. And by the way, you can buy more VA service simply by telling us, and we'll add another 5-hour block on there for you whenever you're ready. And none of that's going to happen without your permission prior. So if you're really interested in getting automated and getting all the work done for you, make sure you go and check our VA service out. And on there, you'll see a list of things that we can do for you. All right, well, let's get going here. A lot to discuss. All right, finding leads online is great, but I got to tell you, the best quality leads come from signs in front of the FSBO's houses. FSBO's signs in front of houses, I found, are one of the best quality leads. You can get more of them on the telephone, and you're going to wind up doing more deals with folks. And I don't really know why, but I do know that if there's a sign in front of the yard, the property's still on the market. That may or may not be true with some of the websites that we go on. And if you're watching this, I know you can ride around and find those FSBO signs. That's really all I'm asking you to do if you want to generate a few leads. Ride around, cruise through the nice neighborhoods, look for the FSBO signs, pull out your cell phone, snap a picture of the sign, and snap a picture of the house, and send the picture of the sign to our VA, or call it yourself, and voila, here will come back a property information sheet. Let them get the facts for you. All you got to do is take the picture, and when I get you in my live training, I hope someday in the near future I'll show you how to actually get an army of people out into the field doing all this for you, so you don't even have to do that riding around if you don't want to. All right, so let's get on to this property information sheet now and make sure we're clear on what we're trying to accomplish, because if you're the one filling this out, we got to get it done properly, or you will not be able to use it to effectively get to the end, and frankly, you're just wasting your time. This sheet is worthless unless the blanks we're about to discuss are filled in. Now, if you'll take a look inside the red circle, you'll see that we're asking the seller what they want for the property, and then right below that, we're asking them what they think it's worth. That's two important things I want to know. Notice the stars. Wherever you see a star, it's a must, not a maybe. It must be filled in, or you're kind of dead in the water. I want to know what the seller thinks it's worth, because when I go on Zillow and look what I think it's worth, if they think it's worth way more than it really is worth, then I know I'm dealing with an unmotivated seller and pretty much wasting my time, frankly. I can pay people more than what it's worth, but I'm not going to pay them a ridiculous price. And by the way, the only reason I'll pay them more than what it's worth is if they give me some killer terms to compensate for the price. If I get good terms, I don't have to have a good price. I would love to have both, don't get me wrong, and I generally get both. But I have paid retail price for quite a few properties in the last few years because of the sweetheart terms that they give me, which we're coming to here in just a minute. So right there in that red circle, I must know what the seller is asking and what the seller thinks it's worth. And then after I finish this script, if I see any reason to continue, for example, they give me a yes answer, they'll do terms, only then will I go to Zillow and find out what I think it's worth on Zillow. Guys, there's really no reason to go to Zillow and put in what you think it's worth. If the seller says no, I wouldn't consider terms. Take a hike. And remember, 2/3 of them are going to tell you to take a hike. They're not interested in terms. So let's get over that right now. 2/3 or more of the people you call have no interest in selling the house on terms. What a shocker. They want retail price and they want all cash. Imagine that. And in fact, I don't think I've ever talked to a seller who doesn't want retail price and all cash. But I'm not looking for those. I'm looking for the ones who will consider terms because it solves their problem and or they don't have to have cash. So always ask what they're asking and what do you think it's worth, or how did you arrive at that number, or whatever. I immediately tell whether they're actually asking more than they know it's worth, or whether they're asking less than what I think it's worth, and immediately I'll get a gauge for where my seller's head is right then and there. Okay, now we go down into this critical block, and this block is critical. You must know what the loan balance is on the house if there is one. If it's free and clear, you put a 0 there under loan balance. And we must know the payment. If we don't know the payment and the loan balance, how on earth will we ever decide whether we want to take over the debt or if we even lease option it, how much of a payment we got to cover the seller's debt, and or if we buy it with owner financing, same thing, how much of a payment we got to cover. And certainly we can't be offering the seller less than what they're owed on the property, so we have to have the facts. Guys, your whole offer is going to be built around that block right there, what they owe and what their payment is. So we cannot leave that blank and then fill out the rest of it and process this lead. There's just nothing to process until we get the loan amount. Now, some people will resist it, but a lot less than you think. Our VAs do a good job of getting that answer most of the time, and sometimes when they can't get that answer, the seller will clearly tell them, I'll discuss this with the principal, because obviously the seller knows that the VA is not the principal very, very early into the conversation. So if the VA can't get it for you on the front end call, you must get it when you call them out. And here's the real long and the short of it. Any seller who won't tell you what they owe is a seller you're never going to do business with anyway. So if you can't collect the simple facts, you've pre-screened the seller out, whack them, get rid of them, get them out of your life, and be done with it, and move on to the next one that's a little bit more flexible and will actually give you the information you need to make an intelligent decision. Now, you need the loan balance, and you need the loan amount. I mean, the payment. I honestly don't care who the lender is, and I really don't care what the interest rate is. You'll acquire that along the way anyway. But you most certainly need to know whether it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Look in the lower left-hand corner of the red circle, PITI. And so the question is, may I assume that includes taxes and insurance? And if it doesn't, you need to make a note of that. Check PI, not PITI. And may I assume that it is current? So if it is current, most of them will be. Just check yes. The one that I'm telling you that we're buying here today was not current. They were 2 payments behind. So I would want to know that. In other words, if it's in arrears, about how much is it in arrears? Most of the people you talk to that run an ad or have a FSBO sign in front of their house are going to be current. Some people are under the impression that everybody's behind on payments or we're in the foreclosure business. Guys, nothing could be further from the truth. 95% of the houses I buy are current. Their credit is excellent. House in good shape. The one that I'm buying today just has to be an exception to that rule. So you're almost always going to get, yes, the payments are current. Okay? But again, loan balance must be acquired. If I don't get the loan balance, frankly, I don't need the information on the rest of the sheet. So if you're the one making this call, filling out this sheet until you get around to hiring a VA, if you can't get the loan balance, you just might as well get off the telephone because you're wasting your breath getting all the information down at the bottom. All right? Let's move on. Right here is a very, very good script that will quickly identify if the seller will sell their house for what they owe on it, but only when the condition is right to ask that question. Take a look at the question. Will you sell the house for what you owe? My friend, if that comes back a yes, you just got a house for what's owed on it, exactly like the one that I'm buying today. I'm buying it for the loan balance plus closing costs plus 2 payments in this case. Now, if that comes back no, be careful. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't get the house. It just means you won't get it absolutely free. Look at the next block. Well, then what's the least you could take for your equity if we were to take over your payments and pay the closing costs? Sometimes the seller is happy to give you the house, but they need a little bit of moving money. They just need some money to get out. But when you're asked, will you sell for what you owe, they're going to say no. But if you follow up with the script below that, they might wind up saying yes and give you an answer that has a small amount of money. For example, I need $2,000, $3,000, or whatever. And keep in mind that whatever answer the seller gives you right there, it doesn't mean that's what you have to pay. It likely means that's where we start, and once we go see the house, we get that down a little bit lower. But caution, caution, caution. Look at the first line in that red circle where it says, ask only if there's a no more than a $35,000 difference between the loan amount and the asking price. Now, common sense should take over here, but common sense, I find, is not necessarily all that common. If, let's just take an example. Let's say I got a $200,000 asking price up there at the top, and the seller says it's worth about $200, $210, or whatever, but the loan balance is $100. If you come down and ask them, will you sell for what you owe, which is 100, and they're asking 200, you'll look like you just got out of a seminar somewhere, and frankly, you will lose all credibility right then and there. So don't ask that question unless there's a small gap. Let's take same house, worth 200, but seller owes 175. Seller says, I need 185. Well, that is the question you want to ask. Absolutely the question you want to ask. Now, will you sell for what you owe? Because the seller's only looking for 10 grand. You will probably get a yes answer at least 50% of the time. So when there's a small gap between the debt and the asking price, go for, will you sell for what you owe? You'll be surprised how many yeses you will get, but if you forget to ask that question, you'll never get a yes. So that's the beauty of these scripts. Will you sell for what you owe? Yes? Good. Stop. You've accomplished it. Now you go down to the next session. And then secondly, if they say no, well, then what's the least you could take if I were to take over your debt and pay your closing cost? And let's say you get an answer that take $2,000 or $3,000, it's still a go. Stop. Go down to the next block. So I hope everybody got that.
Hey, Ron?
Emily, you've got questions?
Yep, I got one that's kind of relative to here. It says, when buying subject to, would you add the land trust you used to buy the property to the seller's existing insurance policy as an additional insured?
Well, that question really has nothing to do with what I'm talking about here, but I'll answer it.
Okay.
And by the way, guys, keep your questions germane to what we have covered.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, if I haven't covered them, then I'll try to get as many as I can in. But when I will take title to this property in a land trust, that is correct. And I will probably get it insured by my friend Chuck Juergens out of Raleigh, which I don't have the number handy here. But you can go on our Gold Club site and get it. Chuck will insure the properties, and he could care less whether you insure it in a land trust or whether you insure it in somebody's name or whatever. But I don't need to add the additional insured. I'm going to change the policies. I'm going to have a new policy because it's a landlord policy. I'm probably buying this from an owner-occupant, so their policy wouldn't be in effect anyway. Plus, my landlord policy is cheaper than their owner-occupant policy. So if I buy it in a land trust, I'm going to insure it in the land trust if I go to Chuck. If I'm not, I'm just going to insure it in my own name if I go to my own insurance company, and they won't do it in a land trust.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, one more on subject
Any
to.
other question?
Yeah. And
right.
and that is when everything's a go, it's a deal, how does the seller manage to get another house if this one hasn't been closed out yet?
This loan will stay in the seller's name, and that is disclosed very quickly into this conversation. In fact, it's right on our script when we get to it. It will be disclosed again at the closing in front of an attorney, and the seller will sign off that they understand that in my CYA letter. So don't assume that that is a problem that will keep them from giving you the house. In my experience, most people who will give you the house and deed it to you subject to have no intentions of ever going to apply for another loan anyway. And if they do, you cannot help them in that respect. If you take title to a property subject to, that debt, that payment will show on their credit report until you pay it off. And so don't be making any promises that you're going to pay it off at any time in the near future. It's just part of the process. I have bought hundreds and hundreds of houses subject to, and the common assumption is for you to assume that that's somehow going to affect the seller so that they won't do it. Our job is very simple. Let the seller decide what's best for the seller and get out of their way and let them do it and not try to think for them or be their advisor. We make sure they understand what they're doing. If they don't care, we don't care. By the way, if, in fact, they don't like the idea of deeding it to you and leaving it alone in their name, there's only one way you can fix it, and that's to buy it with owner financing or to do a lease purchase on it, which are the next two things we're going to talk about. But whether you do either one of those or not, the loan's still going to stay in their name until you cash it out. So let's be clear. If the seller is not willing to leave the loan in their own name, you are not going to be doing the deal with this seller.
Thank you, Ron.
That answers that question.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, let me move on here then to the next block. If there's a loan on the property, but it's got some equity in it, then this is the question that I would instruct you to ask, and that is, would you consider doing a lease purchase if we take over the responsibility for all your repairs? Now, you're going to get a lot of yeses on this one. In fact, a lot more than you imagine. And if they say yes, you're in. You know that they've agreed to at least talk about a lease purchase, which is terms. That means you'll be leasing the property with an option to buy, and you'll probably be making the same payment that they're making as your rent payment. And almost all of these are done with no money out of our pocket to the seller. The seller usually doesn't even ask for a deposit, and we don't offer a deposit. If you get up into the higher properties, $750, $1 million, $1.5 million, they may ask for a deposit. But even then, they only ask generally for the first month's rent, which I am happy to pay them when I'm into the larger numbers, especially when most of the time when I'm into the higher end properties, I will not close on the lease purchase and make myself obligated to any payments until I install a tenant buyer in the house and collect the money from them and know it's a go. That's a seminar for the next lesson. Right now, it's all about filling this thing out and getting the correct answers, not about trying to train you what to do with them all the way through to the end. So when I ask the question, will you consider a lease purchase, and they say yes, I am done with that whole middle section. I am done with A, B, and C. Now it's time to go down to the section below to get some house information and some the other information in the next section. So keep in mind now, I'm only looking for one yes in A, B, or C. If A is applicable, I'll ask, will you sell for what you owe? If A is not applicable because the loan balance spread is too far apart, or in fact it's free and clear, then I start with B if there's a loan on it. If there's not a loan on it and it's free and clear, I'm going directly to C, as your scripts will direct you here in a few minutes. Now, let's take a look at C. C says, would you consider taking your equity in monthly installments? If the answer is yes, you're done. Stop and move down to the next section below. If the answer is no, please notice that it goes into the lease option question that's in B. So when a house is free and clear, and I ask them if they would consider owner financing, and it's a no, and then I ask them about a lease option, and it's a no, I've just pre-screened out this seller. If they won't lease option it to me, or they won't owner finance it to me, I can't do business with them. We're done. Case over. Move on. Next prospect. So I'm going to get a yes on an A, a B, or a C, or I'm gone. I'll say that again. The whole purpose of this whole exercise, the whole reason you're doing all of this, hiring VAs, is to get a yes in one of those three blocks. No yes, no go, move on. Now let's go down to the next block. In this block, you'll see that I'm asking some pretty important questions. They're here for a reason, and they're critical. Like, how did you arrive at your asking price? I'd kind of like to know where they got that number at. Did they use comps or did they just make it up? Why are you selling? That's important to me as well, because if I can tell right there if they're really motivated or not. And sometimes it's a divorce. Sometimes they're moving. Sometimes the house is already vacant. Look right below that. You'll see where you can check vacant or occupied. My friend, that's very important to me. If it's vacant, I know they're more motivated. If it's vacant, I also know that I can take over the property as soon as we can come to an agreement, and I can start putting tenant buyer in it. If it's occupied, I may not have that luxury. I may have to wait till the seller gets out first. If it's vacant, I know I can get free access to the house to show it. If it's occupied, I know I can't. So I prefer them to be vacant. I'll work with them when they're occupied, but only after I meet with the seller and discuss when they'd like for me to start showing the property. Does it need repairs? Of course that's important. I just need a yes or a no. I don't need a repair estimate. But if what I'm looking for is this. Does it need any work? Does it need a little work? Or does it need a lot of work? And if it needs a lot of work, then it's going to totally change the complexion of the deal, because it's going to be more difficult to sell, and it's probably going to lower the price I have to sell it at. If it needs no work, as most of them don't, I know that there's nothing to do, and I'm going to get in and get out, and probably have an easy time putting this into the marketplace and getting a good sizable down payment when the house is in excellent condition. When do you want to move? That's important if it's occupied, because that tells me how motivated they are and how fast I can actually probably get a paycheck. And then, of course, is the house listed. My friends, if the house is listed, you must know it's listed. You cannot go behind a listing agreement and buy this house. If you do, you're going to get sued. If the house is listed, you must wait until it is not listed, or you must ask the seller to get the agent to see if they will release the listing. They do not have to, but many times they will. Or somebody's got to pay a commission if you buy it. Because if it is listed, you cannot lease it with an option to buy, nor can you buy it with owner financing, nor can you take over the deed subject to unless you're willing to pay the commission. Realtor has a legal binding agreement, and you just can't ignore that, nor can the seller, and hope it'll go away. It will go away likely after you get sued and get a judgment for the commission. They'll sue you and the seller. So if it's listed, it's off limits till one of those three things happens. Now, you take a look at that little block right there. That is only for you to fill out. It says, what's the down payment, what's the monthly payment, and what's the term? The VAs will not ask that question because I won't let them. I do not want them asking that question. They're not qualified to ask that question, and they don't have the scripts in front of them to ask that question as well. They have the one you're looking at. They don't have the ones we're about to get to. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but just make note. Do not expect your VAs to fill in that little block right there for you. I certainly do not want them to talking about down payment, monthly payment, and so forth at this stage of the game. So that is for you to fill out, and you only when you're making the outbound call after your VA's made the front-end call. Now, if you're the one filling out this form, then obviously you would continue the conversation while you have the seller on the phone to fill out that little red circle right there. That little red circle is the difference between whether we're going to do a deal or not going to do a deal, and as I will show you here in just a minute. And lastly is the house information. Of course, we want to know how many bedrooms and baths are in the house, and of course, we want to know approximately how many square feet. And is it a house or a condo? That's an important one now, because if it's a condo or a townhouse, you need to know the association fee and whether that's monthly or yearly. But another note you might want to make is you might want to ask the seller if there's any restrictions against renting the houses in that association. Some of them do have, and some of them don't have. Just one side note, that bottom block right there does not need to be filled out if they don't give you a yes answer in the top. You can if you like, but honestly, it's pretty much a waste of your time to do it if you know darn well you're not going to do any business with a seller. That's why it's at the bottom and not at the top. Now you simply call a seller and read the appropriate script, or do so immediately if you're completing a property information sheet as we just discovered. So you got the information. Now let's get to the critical stuff that we need to determine whether it's a deal or no deal. All right, here's the script. Now, I don't know how to make this any simpler. It says, here's the script to call a FSBO with a yes on will you sell for what you owe. So I don't know how to make that any better. Okay. Obviously, you only call this if you get a yes. Now, take a look at the top and look how it's written. So, hi, John. This is Ron calling you about the house you discussed with my assistant yesterday, if that's applicable. Of course, if you're on the phone with him and you're filling out the sheet yourself, you will not start there. You will start down at the bottom here, whether you get a yes or no answer. This we'll get to. Do you have a minute? Okay, well, look, I got all the facts here, and you've indicated you sell the house for what you owe on. Is that correct? If the answer is yes, follow the line down to the yes in the middle there. Okay, well, look, I can come see the house and likely buy it and close as soon as you're ready and pay the closing costs, but the only way for me to do so is to take over the debt. Now, John, that means I'll buy your house and I'll make the payments. When you and I agree, I'll start, but the loan will stay in your name until sometime in the future when I get it cashed out. Well, that'd be a problem for you. So you see, my friends, I've made it very clear right on the front end. If they got to have their loan paid off, I'm not their huckleberry. So I want to know that before I go to the house, because if they won't let me take over the debt and make the payments, there's nothing I can do for them. There's no reason to make an appointment. There's no reason to go see the house. Now, that only took me about 15 years to learn, so I suggest you read this script and act accordingly and not try to bypass it. Now, if they say that's not a problem, you go right to the appointment script, which we'll come back to in a minute. If they say that is a problem, well, if that's an issue, follow the arrows. If that's an issue, I can also lease purchase it or buy it with owner financing and cover your payment with rent and handle repairs. Does that seem more appealing? So, see, the point is this. Sometimes they don't want to leave the loan in their own name and just deed it to you. If that's their objection, you can handle that. by either lease purchasing or buying with owner financing. However, if their objection is, no, I got to have this loan paid off or I can't sell my house, there's nothing you can do for them. So let me say that again. If the loan must be paid off now, you're out. Move on. So read the script and get it to a conclusion. Now, let's look at the lease option script. Again, if you guys join me late and you don't have this, you can go to ronlegrand.com/handouts and get all of these scripts and the property information sheet. And, of course, they're also on the Gold Club site as well if you're a Gold Club member. All right, look at this one. Script to call back a FSBO with a yes on the lease option question. Very simply written. Hi, same intro. I got all the facts here, and you've indicated you would consider a lease purchase. Is that correct? Well, go right down to the yes at the bottom. Now look at the bottom. Okay, well, I can probably lease it and cover your payment with rent, and we can work on a price when I get out there, but after I do a little homework, as long as I know you're flexible and realistic, I'm ready to move forward. May I assume you are? And then you go right to the appointment script. And if you want to know anything else at this point, might not be a bad idea to confirm that if you covered their monthly payment with rent, that would be okay with them. If there's anything else you need to know, ask it, but the point is to get to the appointment script. Guys, very simple script. Just follow the script. Now, what if they say no? Is that correct? They say no. Well, are you saying you won't lease purchase? Well, if the answer is yes, they won't lease purchase. Well, would you rather I buy it with owner financing if we can work out the terms? Okay. Then we're going to go to the script we're about to go to anyway because it's the same as the owner financing script. So here's the owner financing script. This is the one that people get hung up on the most. And yet if you just follow it and read it as I wrote it, you'll find it's very, very simple. So it starts out the same. Okay, you've indicated you take your equity in monthly installments if we can agree upon the terms. Is that correct? Now go all the way down to the bottom. Follow that line all the way down to the bottom where it says yes. Now, my friends, these questions at the bottom of this sheet are probably the most important questions you're going to ever ask in the pretty house real estate business. These questions are going to help you determine whether you got a suspect or a prospect and whether you got a hot deal or a mediocre deal. Let's go through the questions and see if you can understand why. Look at the first one. Okay, well, what's the least you could accept on the price if we agree upon the terms? Make yourself a note there. Shut up right there and wait for an answer. When you get an answer, you're always going to say, is that the best you can do? Now, guys, listen, don't go any further than that right now. We are not trying to negotiate a deal on the telephone when the seller knows that you haven't seen the house yet. Right now, I just want to see where their head is. I want to see what price is the least they will take, and I do not want to push them on this, or you'll negotiate yourself right out of an appointment. So now I know what the seller wants, and apparently what's the least they'll take, at least for now. Now look at that next question. May I assume you will sell with nothing down? Guys and gals, that's exactly the way you ask that question, with those exact words. Do not use your own words. Read Ron's script. May I assume you will sell with nothing down means you assume they will. Will you sell with nothing down means you assume they won't, and you're begging for permission. If you ask that question the way I wrote it, you'll find you'll get a lot more yeses to that question than you can possibly imagine. And in fact, I'll tell you how many yeses you'll get. Of all of the people who say yes, they would consider owner financing and take their equity in monthly installments, about 30% of those people will say, yes, I will sell for nothing down. Now, I know you don't believe that, but if you'll get out there in the real world and use my script verbatim, convince yourself they will say yes, and I promise you, when they say yes, they will take nothing down, your heartbeat is going to rise rapidly. Let the seller decide what's best for them. Ask the questions, let them answer. Now, look what it says if they say no. Of course, that's in your mind what you're thinking they're going to say, so you're going to be prepared. Well, then what's the least you could take down? What's the least you could take down? Now you know where their head is. So if the house is worth $200 and now they're saying they'll take $5,000 down, you know you still got a good deal here working. And then lastly, what's the lowest monthly payment you could take? And by the time you get through asking those questions, you're going to know whether your seller is the kind that is going to give you sweetheart terms, like nothing down, a low monthly payment, and hopefully a longer term and maybe some equity. That's the kind of deal you want to get out there quickly and see if you can get signed up, because we call those golden geese. We live for those golden geese. In fact, I could say that your whole machine is built just to get to the bottom of this script right here so that you can get some good quality answers that will put you in houses that you literally can make a big front-end profit, a big monthly profit, and a big nice back-end profit, because the seller is willing to give you what we call sweetheart terms. Now take a look at that same script, and if you don't like the answers at the bottom, for an example, the seller is looking for about retail price, and they're looking for a reasonable monthly payment, but not one where you can make a big monthly spread on, and they'll do a term, but it's 3-4 years, well, you still got a deal. You just don't have a goose. All you got to do is sign that deal up and now put it out into the marketplace and find somebody who will give you more than you have to give the seller down, and then get out of the deal anytime you wish. We call that an AX deal, which is Assignment of Contracts and Terms system. So today, I can work with the sellers that don't give me great terms, or I can work with the sellers who give me great terms. On the great terms, I'm going to stay in. On the not-so-great terms, I may decide to get out. Either way, I get to keep all that front-end deposit I get from my tenant buyer or down payment from my owner-financed buyer. I hope you understood what I just said. I'm trying to do a whole seminar here in a few minutes, doing the best I can. But if you don't understand it, then I'll see you in the 4-day event as soon as you can get there. Okay, here's the appointment script. Now, I wrote this appointment script just to keep you from screwing up for making the appointment, because if you don't use this script, you will screw up. There's a couple of very key ingredients here. Number one, are you the only owner? Guys, if you go trucking out to the house and there's husband and wife own the house and only one of them's present, you've probably done yourself more harm than good. If husband tries to explain this to wife or vice versa after you're gone, what a mess they're going to make. You want to do everything you can to get both of them present and wait to go see the house until they are both present so you can explain it to them both at the same time and get a joint agreement. And then secondly, how are you going to get a contract signed if both of them aren't there? It's going to require both signatures. Now, sometimes, much of the time, we don't get the contract signed that day. We have to leave it and pick it up or have it delivered shortly after. But just the same, I want both heads in the game. And secondly, and most importantly, I guess, if I come out to your house today and I like what I see and we can agree upon the terms, are you ready to sell your house and get some paperwork done while I'm there? Guys, I promise you I visited 100, 200 houses before I got around to asking that question and wasting trips. If they are not ready to sell, why on earth would you want to go? I want to know they're ready to sell. So they got to point blank tell me, yeah, we're ready to sell if we can agree upon the terms. So when I get the right answers here, I'll make the appointment. If I don't get the right answers here, I'll kill the appointment. Again, I got better things to do than riding around looking at houses that I'm not going to buy. Oh, it only took me about 15 years to figure that out. I hope you get it a lot quicker than that. You've just completed the first 3 steps. Locating the prospects. I gave you a couple of tools to do that with. And frankly, I gave you enough to locate more prospects than you're ever possibly going to handle right then and there. And if you'll remember, that was riding around looking FSBO signs and having the VAs locate them online. Now, if you want, you can also run ads on these same sites, and probably a good idea. I buy house ads. I buy houses and give them your email and your phone number. Please give them your phone number. Let people get in touch with you. Let them call you. Let them discuss the house with you until you get set up and systemized, and then that call will go to Pat Live, which is a 24-hour answering service we have that will take those calls for you, forward them to you, and then you forward them to your VA. Anyway, locating prospects is not that difficult. There's tons of them out there. If you just do the few things that I just asked you, that should get you started with more than you can actually follow up on. Pre-screening, again, I would much prefer you let our virtual assistants do it for you. But if you insist on doing it yourself, you can call that same seller and fill out that same form and get it to the bottom like our VAs can. What bothers me is, though, you're going to talk to so many people who you're not going to do business with you. It's not going to take long to get you demotivated, which is why I would so much prefer you let other people do what they do best and get out of their way so you can do what you do best. Guys, what you should be doing best is making decisions. Let everybody else do all of that other stuff for you so that you only have to make the decisions. I buy several houses a month here in my office, which I'm sitting in right now. And when I'm buying houses, the only decision I make is which seller that I want to do business with after I've seen the property information sheet called and after the seller said yes to terms. And then in my case, after I've had my staff member call them and literally semi-create those terms on the telephone. Then and only then do I decide we're going to go forward. I let a lot of so-called deals go by because there's just not enough money in them for me, and or they look like they're going to be tough. My world revolves around low-hanging fruit. I've decided to spend my time working with the people who want to work with me and whack the rest at lightning speed. And since we have all these amazing systems set up now, it's pretty easy to decide who wants to work with me and who doesn't. So I don't beg them. I don't chase them. I'm not even going to ask them twice. What I am going to do, though, is make sure that there's a consistent enough flow of leads coming across my desk to where I can pick the low-hanging fruit and still got more than we can follow up on. If you get yourself 10 or 15 of these property information sheets filled out in a week, believe me, you're going to have more houses to buy than you actually even want. Just think about it. Get 15 sheets and follow up on all those people. And I mean, how many visits to houses do you think you're going to need to get before you make a phone call? Remember, you're not even going to visit the house. Seller has said yes to terms, and you feel like there's somebody you want to work with. So it doesn't take a lot of time. You decide who you want to work with, call that person, make the appointment or don't, visit the house, leave the contract, and next day after, you have a written binding agreement on this house, this several $100,000 asset that you're getting for free or close to it. This is not rocket science. And on the selling side, I only make one decision. Do I want to accept this buyer? And that's largely made because they got enough money to satisfy me. So when people call our IVR and our team follows up on it, and they got, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 or more, they get my attention. Yeah, if they call my IVR and they got $2,000 to put down, they can pay $500 a month. They do not get my attention. So it's the same process. We do everything we can to drive as many buyers as we can into the IVR, let the cream rise to the top, let the crap float away, deal with the few that go through the system, the few that have the money, the few that are worth our time to follow up on. I hope you're clearly understanding how important getting this thing systemized is. I make the decision to what seller I want to work with. I make the decision to what buyer I will accept, and everything else is done for me. By the way, who made whom the offer? The seller made you the offer. Remember, you were asking them questions. They were answering your questions. They told you they'd take nothing down or little down. They told you what they'd take per month. They told you what they'd take for the price. There's not much left for you to do except go make the appointment and then polish those terms the best you can to get them to a conclusion and do the best you can and get it in writing. And that is the whole front end right there. If you can get through the process I just described, you've actually cracked the code and have done the thing that stops most people from actually doing deals, and that's just getting through this front end process. Frankly, once we get past the knock on that door and get in that house and get that appointment over with, everything from there is very easy and honestly almost all done for you, but no more confrontations with sellers and no more phone calls for you to make. It's all done automatically after you start putting that house on the market. All right. Well, that's the end of this lesson, but I got some more. You got more questions, Emily?
I do.
I got a lot more to cover here, guys, so don't go away.
All right. Well,
All right.
Just for clarity for some of the people, they're listening to you, they came on late, and they're trying to zero in on, do I do just this? I know that you were saying if you just follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the steps. In other words, we had one person say, so all you're trying to do is find out how much down you have to do. So a couple people, right?
No, not at all. All right. Well, step one is to locate prospects. We've covered how to do that. We do that online and we do that offline with FSBO signs. And remember, only FSBOs, not listed houses. Step 2 is pre-screening them. We do that by filling out the property information sheet or have a virtual assistant do it for us. And then step 3 is finding out if they really mean that they'll do terms and then what terms they got in mind. And that's where we call the scripts that we just used to call them and come to a conclusion on that. Few of those people that we start with will make their way to the bottom of that and be worth us doing business with. And that's the steps. Now, if the question is, do I do the pretty houses and the ugly houses? Yes, but the ugly house business is a totally different discussion, totally different way, totally different entrances, all cash deals, and really has nothing to do with the training we're doing today. So those three, everything that I've just discovered here gets you to the point where you're ready to present a contract to the seller. And by the way, you can go on Gold Club site and see plenty of contract presentations as well. And then, of course, now we got to get into the selling side, which is a whole nother training. But, guys, I'm going to encourage you strongly. If you don't come to my 4-day boot camp and put all of this in one coherent piece and watch us do deals right in front of your face, man, you're going to have a hard time putting these pieces together. So let's don't kid each other. I'm trying to do the best I can to get the part of this process covered today that I can. And I hope I've done a good job of that. But there's plenty more training in the back end.